Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating document called Getting God's Perspective. It lays out a very specific framework for how a religious text, in this case the Bible, proposes shifting from our limited everyday human point of view to a divine one, especially when things get tough. Our focus today is how trials change your outlook. We're going to explore how the source material frames adversity. It's not just a roadblock you have to survive, it's actually framed as a crucial lens for absolute transformation.
So, that brings us to a pretty compelling question. Can suffering actually clarify our vision? I mean, it's a bold concept, right? The source material we're looking at challenges our basic human instinct to just run away from pain. Instead, it suggests that adversity and trials might literally be the exact mechanisms we need to reshape our entire worldview and get some true clarity.
Okay, let's dive into this. Before we can really grasp how trials change our perspective, we kind of need to establish what that word actually means. Perspective is defined as a way of regarding situations and judging their relative importance. Basically, it's about achieving objectivity, or the proper point of view. Think of it as the internal lens through which you assign meaning and weight to the bare facts of your life. It's how you interpret the whole shebang, from a major life crisis all the way down to a minor daily frustration.
To show just how powerful this lens is, the document brings up a fantastic historical example. You can look at failure as a definitive reason to quit, which, let's be honest, is incredibly tempting sometimes. Or you can look at it the way Thomas Edison did. When he was trying to invent the light bulb, Edison failed over 1,000 times. But his perspective? He said, "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." The actual facts of the situation didn't change at all, but his outlook completely altered the outcome.
Now, when we apply this concept back to our source text, a pretty interesting detail pops up. The exact word perspective isn't actually in the Bible, but the core concept is heavily expressed throughout the text through 4 specific words: vision, wisdom, understanding, and revelation. These are the traits that the text argues make up a divine outlook.
To really illustrate the massive gap between our natural, human outlook and a divine one, the document points straight to the book of Isaiah, which says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord." The text emphasizes that human reasoning naturally operates on an entirely different and much lower plane than what it describes as God's perspective. The source frames this gap as the main reason why humans need to actively seek out this higher viewpoint.
So how exactly do you bridge that massive gap? Well, according to the source, it requires a complete mental overhaul. Romans chapter 12 instructs readers, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." The explainer here is that you simply cannot gain this new perspective while clinging to standard earthly reasoning. It takes an active, intentional transformation of how you process everything around you.
And that active transformation, it means entirely shifting your focus. Colossians chapter 3 instructs us to set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. The text is telling its readers to focus on eternal things rather than getting bogged down by temporary, earthly concerns. The source argues that maintaining this eternal perspective is exactly what stabilizes a person when the temporary world around them starts getting chaotic.
Which brings us right into the crucible of this mental transformation. How do our deepest trials act as a catalyst to change our outlook? It's one thing to want a renewed mind when everything is going perfectly, but the source document posits that it's actually conflict and suffering that force this paradigm shift to finally happen.
Let's look at how this plays out with just everyday conflict. The natural human perspective views conflict simply as a disruption to your life plans, right? Like hitting a massive traffic jam when you're already 10 minutes late for a meeting. It's a huge annoyance. But the empowered, divine perspective outlined here views conflict as an opportunity to fix an underlying problem you didn't even know existed. It's a massive shift from seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance to becoming a highly engaged problem solver.
And this brilliantly illustrates the deepest shift of all, how we view trials and suffering. Instead of viewing trials as a punishment from God, which, let's face it, is a very common human reaction when things go wrong, the text frames trials as a profound opportunity. It is an opportunity to apply and purify our faith so that it becomes more valuable than gold. It completely redefines the very purpose of pain.
The document grounds this challenging concept in the book of James with a really striking verse. "Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience."
The text impartially outlines that the testing of faith isn't a penalty at all. It's a completely necessary process. It's presented as the only way to produce the patience and completeness required to actually hold on to that higher perspective.
To further support this outlook, the source points to a very famous verse in Romans 8:28. It assures believers that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to His purpose. The narrative here is that a divine purpose is actively weaving everything together. Yes, even the intense suffering, even the massive disruptions, it's all for an ultimate good. The trial isn't random, it's highly purposeful.
But maintaining this outlook under pressure, that is definitely not a one-time event. The source introduces a practical framework, starting with a reminder from the Apostle Peter. Peter emphasizes that we must be firmly established in the truth to align our perspective. Human nature forgets easily, especially when we are hurting, right? So the text stresses the absolute need for constant, deliberate reminders of these truths to stay aligned.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how exactly we achieve that constant reminder. The source material lays out 3 specific pillars required to actively adjust one's worldview to align with the divine. They are, number 1, His Word, number 2, His work, and number 3, His timing. Let's look at each of these sequentially to see how they build on each other.
Pillar 1 is His Word. The document explains that this represents the absolute truth meant to shape our worldview, our values, and our conduct. It's the foundational step. It involves actively studying the text and allowing it to dictate your earthly values and your daily behavior, rather than just letting the surrounding culture dictate them for you. It's all about grounding yourself in something permanent.
Moving on to Pillar 2, His work. This step clarifies that the divine is working on a much larger, very different purpose than our own personal life plans. The goal isn't necessarily to make us comfortable and successful by human standards, but to actually transform us. It requires fully surrendering personal agendas to a broader divine strategy, which fundamentally changes your outlook because it asks you to do something really hard. Let go of control.
And finally, we have Pillar 3, His timing. This is usually the hardest one, since human beings aren't exactly known for their stellar patience. Aligning your perspective requires immense trust during trials. It means trusting that change and answers to your prayers will come at the right time, not necessarily your preferred time. It's about enduring the painful process without rushing or trying to manipulate the outcome.
So, the crucial point is that seeking God's perspective grants the grace and patience needed to accomplish our life's purpose. The source argues that taking the time to gain this divine viewpoint isn't just some high-level theological exercise, it's incredibly practical for everyday life. It yields the actual grace and endurance you need to not just survive your trials, but to truly thrive through them.
The document brings it all together with this final anchor quote from Proverbs chapter 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him. It perfectly reinforces the central theme we've been exploring today. It is a direct, poetic call to intentionally abandon our limited human understanding in favor of complete divine trust.
Which leaves us with a final thought to consider right now. How might viewing your current trials as an opportunity for purification change your outlook today? Whether you are facing a minor conflict at work or a major life disruption, applying this framework, shifting from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What is this purifying in me?" might just change everything. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring how your perspective shapes your reality.